I do want to go first because I wasn't going to go first, but then I heard Tommy speak and I thought this is just too easy.
Wow.
This
is like when I was in the White House and Mehdi with the journalists and he used to kick our ass.
You know what Tommy said? You know what Tommy said? To lose the entire debate? He said it's an eternity until the election. So if it's an eternity until the election, why the fuck do you want an 81-year-old guy waiting for an eternity? I don't want to wait any longer. 4 months? Yeah, that's an eternity. My dad is 86 years old. He's one of the smartest, most knowledgeable, most hardworking people I've ever met. My dad doesn't want to be put in charge of anything right now, let alone the nuclear codes. And by the way, when you're making the case for Joe Biden, don't mention proctology exams. That's not helping your side either. It's just not. Last but not least, let's just deal with this debate bullshit. It was just one bad night. Obama-Romney, there wasn't that much at stake. The guy wanted a binders full of women. He wanted to put his dog on the car. Democracy is at stake.
Real ones never forget the car.
And therefore, we need a guy who's not going to say, beat Medicaid and run out of steam. We need a guy who's going to beat the fascist, save American democracy. And that requires big D Democrats to put their big boy pants on and sort this shit out and have a brokered convention in August and have some democracy.
Yeah. Let's get into this. We did want to talk about and react to a little bit of a recent live Pod Save America episode with Mehdi Hasan. Usually we don't give much credence to whatever the hell the folks at Pod Save America are talking about, but we are a big fan of Mehdi, and whenever he stops by, it makes for a more interesting panel conversation, as it definitely did here. And apparently, actually, I didn't know this, but Mehdi Hasan actually used to be much more in the Zac camp of not switching out, not swapping Joe Biden. It's a bad idea, et cetera, et cetera. He seems to have changed his tune a little bit after the debate. So I'm interested to hear if you agree at all with his reasoning, Zac, if he's able to convince you at all, or if you're still pretty firm in your resolve that it's a terrible idea for the Democratic Party to do a nominee swap at the last second. So let's take a look, guys. This is a pretty interesting little discussion. We'll probably react to the first 5 or so minutes where Mehdi kind of lays out the case.
Let's go.
Jesus Christ.
A lot of Chumbawamba fans here tonight.
I get knocked down when I get up again.
I get knocked down.
Donald Trump had a bit of a different take. Yeah, you can boo that. All right, Mehdi. Well, so a lot of our listeners, they've already heard our takes on the debate. So I'm going to start with you. I want you to know I don't enjoy doing this, but yesterday before the debate, you tweeted, I think Republicans will regret setting the bar so low for Biden and helping spread the distorted image of him as a guy who is totally out of it, suffering from dementia, no grip on reality, no ability to speak. Any updates there?
John, it's even worse because there was an extra line at the end of the tweet that said, it's a very low bar for him to clear. The update is that the bar was not cleared.
It was not cleared.
The update was that I am someone. The reason I wrote that tweet, John, is because for several months, actually for several years, when I was at MSNBC for 3 years, I did a lot of monologues, a lot of segments saying the age thing, it's not as big as people say. Yes, he's old, but that can't be the defining issue when you're up against a deranged, narcissistic fascist who tried to steal democracy. And I said for a few weeks since I left MSNBC, same position. In the last few months, we had all these distorted videos from Fox, the TikTok nonsense. It's like, come on, this is bullshit. And then last night happened.
Yeah.
And I can't say that anymore.
Yeah.
And from like 9:01, I couldn't say that anymore. I don't know what I was watching because, as I say, I wrote the tweet. I thought this should be straightforward. I don't know what I was watching. The inability to finish whispered sentences, the deer in the headlights, the inability to actually, my biggest complaint about last night was separate to age or abilities. I want a presidential candidate who is going to batter Donald Trump because Donald Trump is for the battery. And
he didn't do well. Like Donald Trump
do well.
Turned in a terrible performance.
Yes, he turned in the second worst debate performance we have seen in 2024.
RFK. We have
a blonde-haired stoner and a Fritz half, and one half retarded commentator. And even we are far more insightful and less annoying than the bloviating than whoever the fuck that whiny asshole is that keeps chiming in. I am desperate to get more Mehdi Hasan out of this clip, but I don't know how much more I can stand of this asshole on the far left. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Bro, you're ruining our chances of getting invited on Pod Save America.
I'll go. You can go without me. It'll be one of those deals where you guys will be like, Zach has to work. He's not here today. Oh no, where is he? Yeah. He wasn't invited. Just like when Gavin goes on Hassan Piker.
Joe Biden lost a debate to a guy last night who, when he was asked about climate change, said, "We had H2O." That is what he said.
I took that note. I had notes on the debate, and so I would once in a while type out something that Donald Trump said. And then every time Joe Biden would speak, I would just type, Jesus Christ.
All right. So I think we've seen enough. We can watch a little bit more in a second if you want to, Zach, because Mehdi does make some more interesting comments about what could potentially go down at a convention. But what I think this really proves is actually something that I was kind of making the case for the other day, which is that most Democrats, they're not even voting for Joe Biden. They're really just looking for someone to vote for against Donald Trump. What they really want to see isn't even Joe Biden making the affirmative case for what he's going to do in the next 4 years, outlining his goals policy-wise, and There's
no policy section because he won't do anything.
Exactly. And that's not even, unfortunately, what they're calling him out on. I would be, in addition to calling him out on this stuff, be talking about like, hey, you should probably give the American people something to actually vote for, actually inspire people and give them a platform that they can believe in and at least something to hold on to hope, right? Instead, what's the majority of this conversation focused on already? It's the fact that Biden wasn't sufficiently able to batter Donald Trump. And that's what most liberals, most Democrats, they really want to see out of this. They want to see someone who can truly expose Donald Trump, really prosecute the case against him, point out and articulate his criminality in a way that's undeniable, in a way that he can't just immediately weasel out of, because Donald Trump is great at doing that. And if you have anything less than like a lawyer there on the debate stage with him, he's just going to weasel out of it. And most, ignorant people won't know any better because they're not following the news. They don't know about all the indictments. They don't know about all of the legal cases and felonies and stuff. They might have heard about it, but who really cares in their eyes? So I think that is definitely proof that the main thing that's now causing some liberals to turn on Biden, who previously hadn't turned on Biden, is the fact that, as I said, he robbed them of the opportunity to really see Donald Trump battered on the debate stage, as Mehdi Hasan put it. And I think that's just really, really pissing off a lot of the Democrats, not just voters, but in media, because that would be such a great, event as far as getting people excited, stimulating the media coverage and everything like that. Instead, it's just depressing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we all saw that coming a mile away. Hard for me to feign shock. Hard for me to feign shock when I've watched every interaction that Joe Biden's done publicly for the last, 4 fucking years. He was a dismal candidate in 2020. They had to hide him in the basement. They literally called him Basement Joe. He would only take interviews from people who would give him the questions in advance. Unthinkable when you think of journalistic integrity, right? That went out the window. People have indulged in that. Anything to stop Donald Trump, right? So they rolled out the red carpet for this guy. Barack Obama got on the phone with Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar. It says, hey, you guys all have to drop out. Elizabeth Warren never coalesced behind Bernie, even came in embarrassingly in 3rd place in her home state, barely ahead of a guy like fucking Bloomberg. It was a dismal, disastrous performance, but she did it because she didn't want to see any momentum going to Bernie Sanders. That's how firm of a grip the Democratic Party establishment had on everyone else in the primary. Okay? Now you take 4 years, the stress of a presidency, even if you're only doing it from 10 to 4, if you're an octogenarian, dude, he's not quite an octogenarian, but he's getting pretty damn close, right? It will unravel you. Just look at it. It used to be really famous. Go look at Jimmy Carter when he went into fucking office, and then look at him when he leaves office, right? 4 years. Go look at Barack Obama when he leaves office. That was 8 years when he was a much younger man. You can just see how it drains you. It changes your stress level so much that your body ages rapidly. That's happening to a guy who was already in dreary shape, a guy who was already experienced dramatic senescence. Okay, he's got dementia. He is sunsetting, as the people say. It's so obvious. And yet you put him out on a debate stage and people were like, I think he's going to be just fine. I was like, I know he's not going to be just fine. He's going to look like a deer in the headlights. And that's exactly what happened. And that was with all the coaching, with all the notes and all the pharmaceuticals you could ever hope to imagine. So you could only dream of how pathetic the shambles this guy would be in. If you just caught him off guard somewhere at 11 o'clock on the afternoon and had to ask him a question. This guy can't articulate himself to the people. It's an embarrassment, but we've seen it coming a mile away. That the fact that people are acting shocked, I don't know. It's just crazy. It's like, how would you fucking possibly believe that?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's genuinely crazy. Like I said, there's another interesting clip in here where Mehdi kind of talks about what could actually go down at a convention where they select another candidate and how it could actually be the best thing possible for the Democrats. I can't find the timestamp right now, but basically he makes the good point that a convention is usually a big point for the nominee to get a bump in the polling, right? Because it's this big, exciting display. A lot of times they'll make like a VP announcement. Donald Trump is expected to make his vice presidential announcement at the RNC. But the DNC is going to be a total fucking flop. If anything, it's going to result in another hit to Joe Biden's polling, because not only is he not an exciting candidate, but the convention will almost certainly be plagued by protesters, not just protesters protesting the Israel and Gaza war, but also people that are just pissed because Biden's so old. They don't want him to be the nominee. So if anything, the convention is only going to seek to hit Biden again in the polls. It's not going to boost his popularity. But if they were going to have a convention where a new candidate was selected, they could have Biden gracefully step down, give a nice speech, and then it would become the most exciting media event in the political realm that we've seen in years. It would become this, reality show where all of a sudden all the most exciting young and up and coming Democrats get to lay out their pitch. They get to talk about their vision for the country. They get to discuss policies that Biden can't even, express properly or coherently because of his cognitive decline. People tuning in that are just average Americans, even people considering voting for Trump, would be like, oh shit, this is a real party again. They're actually talking about ideas that sound like they would make my life better. It would really become exciting, not just on a drama level and on a reality TV level, but also on the level that people really need hope right now. And it would give them something to be inspired by. So that's another reason why Mehdi Hasan thinks this would actually be a great idea for the Democratic Party. I tend to agree with that, despite some of the reservations we've talked about. And it seems like the Pod Save guys are pretty on board with that idea as well, which hilariously led to this subtweet from the Biden-Harris campaign. He says, if you're like me, you're getting lots of texts or calls from folks about the state of the race after Thursday. Maybe it was your panicked aunt, your MAGA uncle, or some self-important podcasters. So yeah, the Biden campaign did not take kindly to this discourse, these suggestions, but nevertheless, they're taking place. So I'm hoping it's not all cope and fantasy, although I am starting to think it is.
Oh, it is all cope and fantasy. It's 100% hope. I can't wait until I get to do my victory lap on this podcast and say, I told you we were all going to die. I told you the glass was half empty. In fact, it was spilled all over the fucking floor. Okay, so now it's time to cry over that spilled milk. If we want to, Gavin, we can listen to the portion of this where Mehdi Hasan officially does call for Joe Biden to be removed. And we can edit out whatever it takes us to find it. But
I think
we might have to suffer a little bit before we get there, guys.
Yeah, let's start watching here. I believe this is where it's going to be.
Let's get the beef going, guys.
Yeah.
I do want to go first because I wasn't going to go first, but then I heard Tommy speak and I thought this is just too easy.
Wow.
This is like when I was in the White House and Mehdi was the journalist and he used to kick our ass.
You know what Tommy said? You know what Tommy said? To lose the entire debate? He said it's an eternity until the election. So if it's an eternity until the election, why the fuck do you want an 81-year-old guy waiting for an eternity? I don't want to wait any longer. 4 months? Yeah, that's an eternity. My dad is 86 years old. He's one of the smartest, most knowledgeable, most hardworking people I've ever met. My dad doesn't want to be put in charge of anything right now, let alone the nuclear codes. And by the way, when you're making the case for Joe Biden, don't mention proctology exams. That's not helping your side either. It's just not. Last but not least, let's just deal with this debate bullshit. It was just one bad night. Obama-Romney, there wasn't that much at stake. The guy wanted a binders full of women. He wanted to put his dog on the car. Democracy is at
Real
stake
ones never
in this
forget the
election,
car.
and therefore we need a guy who's not going to say beat Medicaid and run out of steam. We need a guy who's going to beat the fascist, save American democracy, and that requires big D Democrats to put their big boy pants on and sort this shit out and have a brokered convention in August and have some democracy. Everyone in this room knows that John doesn't even need to speak. We've already won.
Damn.
Wow.
Big D Democrat energy over.
I didn't even see that part of the conversation. That was pretty intense from Mehdi Hasan there. Holy shit.
I do have to point out a little bit of the irony of saying, let's have some democracy right after calling for a brokered election, which is the most undemocratic way to have a election, right after a primary was already held where voters cast their vote.
Primary.
Yeah, you could call it whatever you want. Legally in the court, it would be called a primary. And if you try and shove Joe Biden out without it, there's going to be a legal battle. It would be a nightmare. And Donald Trump will be our president anyway. So I agree with Mehdi that it's a fucking embarrassment that we should have never nominated Joe Biden. I sure should never voted for the guy in the Democratic primary. That would have been ridiculous. But I intend to vote for Jill Stein, who still has all of her faculties.
Yeah. I don't want to, debate for another hour or whatever, but I do continue to think it's downright crazy, insane for you to say that if like the Democrats put up even someone as milquetoast as Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania or Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, that they would lose to Donald Trump, given how unpopular Donald Trump is and given the lack of baggage that a newcomer like Whitmer or Shapiro would have. I just don't see how in hell Americans would pick a convicted felon, someone who did January 6th, someone who they all remember fucking up COVID as bad as he did, someone who's so divisive. You're really telling me the American people are going to go with that fucking guy over just some normie Democrat that they think is young, coherent, inspiring, and at least just do the job on a basic level?
There's this scene in Trial of the Chicago 7 where they're at the house where all the, 7 dudes are staying, and they have their 2 lawyers there, and they also have a lady that's answering the phone. There's an exchange between their trial lawyer and one of the ladies that's volunteering her time where she says, "You're wrong, man. Most people are pretty smart." And he says, "Honey, if you believe that, you're going to get your heart broken every day of your entire life." And that's what I feel like Gavin's careening towards here right now. He's going to, if on the sliver of a chance, if there's a full moon, a shooting star, and every quarter in America stands on top of its head, and because of that, the universe allows a brokered convention, despite the fit and tantrum that not only Joe Biden's family will throw publicly, but also Kamala Harris and all of her K-Hive will throw publicly. I sit here before you, and I want to make my forecast to the people known so that you can refer to me as an oracle.
No, we will.
From here on out.
We'll refer to it.
And tell you that, unfortunately, as shameful, as backwards, and as horrifying as it may seem, the American people with the Electoral College, I'm not prepared to say the popular vote. I'm not prepared to say the popular vote. The Electoral College would go to Donald J. Trump, and he would resume his presidency, which I'm not ruling out would turn into an emperorship.
I totally disagree. I think that anyone but Biden could win the Electoral College. I think it's just a piece of cake. In fact, I actually just saw an interesting article talking about how Steve Bannon was saying just that. So let's take a look here. The Trump campaign has been focused so heavily on upending Biden that Bannon said a replacement could be a wild card. The campaign is starting to wake up after spiking the football, I think wrongly, Bannon told the Washington Post. Trump's Thursday was a Pyrrhic victory. We're going to take out a guy you can beat and beat badly, and we're going to have a wild card. So Steve Bannon's like, fuck, we want to knock down Biden, but don't knock him down too hard, because if he gets replaced, then we're going to have to knock down someone a lot harder to knock down. And I think he's 100% right. I think that, it would actually in some ways be kind of genius for the Democrats to do this brokered convention strategy without telling anyone, because then it would put the Trump campaign in this very awkward and unprecedented situation where they have to, mid-campaign completely rethink their entire strategy and how they're going to attack the Democratic nominee, which up to this point has been the easiest thing ever. I mean, you don't even have to come up with a strategy when it comes to Joe Biden. It's just the way to attack him is just so obvious. It's right there. But, all of a sudden, a newcomer is here, someone without all this baggage. Then all of a sudden, they're wasting money on all this Oppo research. They're scrambling. They're trying to figure out how we're going to run this campaign now that it's not against Joe Biden. So I do think Bannon is onto something there. And I do think that genuinely Trump, if I was Trump, I would be praying that Biden remains the nominee because he's easily fucking beatable. Anyone else does represent an entirely different situation, a total paradigm shift for the whole election. And while it's true that someone like Josh Shapiro doesn't have any name recognition right now, or Gretchen Whitmer, as soon as they got that nomination, their profile would explode. And again, people want someone that they can have hope in, right? I feel that this moment in American politics is actually very similar to the moment after 8 years of George Bush, when the country was just so defeated and Obama was just such. I don't even think Obama really could have won in another election cycle against the establishment competition. I just think that the American people were in such a dark place after 8 years of Bush that it's
kind of like a Jimmy Carter situation where Jimmy Carter only won in the wake of Nixon.
Right. And now we're after, here we are after 4 years of Donald Trump and then 4 years of Joe Biden, who is supposed to restore normalcy to this country, but anything but has occurred. We're in the middle of another war now. It still feels like we're in this nightmare to most people. So I do think it's a kind of similar condition where it's been like now almost a decade since anyone has occupied the White House who the people had any trust in whatsoever. And I really do think it's like an opportune moment for any young rising star in the Democratic Party. Again, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I still think the chances of Biden being the nominee are like 80%, but I am just saying, I do think the mood of the country is perfect for a young, articulate, rising star, anyone to come up and really just like seize on that and seize on the desperation and give people an alternative, even if it's all just bullshit, which it obviously would be, much like Obama. Gretchen Whitmer's not going to govern like a progressive if she became president. But at least people would feel like the country was moving back on the right track, investing in a leader like that. You know what I'm saying? Like the majority of people, when they're asked if America's on the right track, they say it's not. They say that future is only going to get worse. They say things aren't going to get better. If I feel like, that is just a mood that's very good for a candidate like that and for a convention like that. Although, again, I'm not saying it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. For me, I just fall down like hard line on the other side. Like I would say that there's maybe like a 1% chance out there, because I don't want to say there's no chance. I would say there's maybe a 1% chance that they swap out Joe Biden. And while I totally agree with your analysis of the country, here's why I am having a hard time getting over the hump. I think that right now the Democratic Party brand is kind of down bad. And I don't think just sticking anybody in there with that flag title. I think a lot of people are going to be like, what the fuck? Like, this is wild. Like, this has never happened before. You cover politics every single day, right? So I don't know if you're the one that would think that this is weird. This seems undemocratic.
Yeah, most people wouldn't care, though. They don't care at all. So why would this, like, shock them? They'd just be like, oh, the Democratic nominee is someone else now? Okay, time to go to Starbucks. Like, they're not going to be like, oh, what? Like, I just don't think anyone would care.
Come out and vote. I think at this point it's hook, line, and sinker. Donald Trump, 4 more years. I don't think there's anything that can change my mind besides waking up on November. I was wrong. I would have said, I'll tell you what. The last time I was wrong, it happened back in 2016. It's the last time I ever misanalyzed a political situation. Other than that, I was just joking with you and trying to test you to make sure you guys would get it right. But the one time I did make a mistake was my last honest mistake.
One time.
Yeah, Gavin and I are really great at testing chat and making sure that you guys are trying to call us out, just because we don't want to be audience captured. So anyway, we're playing 3-dimensional chess up here, 4-dimensional chess. You guys are playing checkers. But anyway, I just think that Donald Trump has a base. Whoever the Democrats nominate will not have a base. And what have we seen? Really, it comes down to, unless obscene circumstances come down, and you could be on the side that this is an obscene circumstance and it will come down on the other way. But I just think Hillary Clinton, I was so sure was going to win, and I was like very wrong. Gavin, you were right. I was very wrong. That was, but I just think it comes down to I just think the cake is already baked. Is that a fair thing to say? I just think that people have already made up their mind.
I think in the current dynamic with Trump and Biden, absolutely. I think Biden's cooked. I'm saying the only thing that could actually motivate the people that have all resigned themselves to staying home on election day, the only thing that could motivate them to actually get out of their bed and go to the polls is the thought of someone who's not Joe Biden being the president.